Tov. So last night we started talking about, following on from the parasha, talking about Asuli Mikdash, Kedushat Beit Knesset, the idea of a kapandaria, of not using the shul as a place as a shortcut, not going in. You need to get from one side of the street to the other, and there happen to be two entrances to the shul. So the Gemara says you should walk around rather than walking through if you don't need to. If you don't need to go inside. If you do need to go inside the shul, not for a mitzvah purpose, to call somebody or something, so then it says you should stop for a few minutes and sit there, say a pasuk, read, right? And then we saw there was a disagreement in the poskim whether doing that would be enough to use it as a shortcut as well. Truth is, it occurred to me after the shiur last night that this is the situation that we have in this building. For those who may or may not know, if you go up to the top floor, so on the top floor of this building, there is an office, there's a storeroom, there's the printer is up there. So all the time, people need to go up and people need to get things. How do you get up to the top? So you can walk up all the flights of stairs, or you can take the lift. Now, if you take the lift, it only goes up to floor 2. That's the highest it goes. We have another floor on top, floor 3. So if you get out of the lift on floor 2, you're inside the shul, you're inside the Ezrat Nashim, which is part of the... Yeah. Okay. Afterwards, we'll do a tour. But so you can go up to the lift, you can go up to the second floor. But then, if you want to go up further, you have to walk up. But you're walking through the shul, you're walking through the Ezrat Nashim, through the door, and then you can go up. So does that mean if somebody needs to go up to the top, you would have to go every time? You'd have to take the stairs, and if you don't, from here, walk up all 3 flights of stairs. Or if you were to use the elevator, is that exactly this din that we're saying of a kapandaria? So I saw there was a tshuva. What?
It should be, but that's the Ezrat Nashim. It's all my focus about Kedushat Ezrat Nashim.
Okay, yeah. So it is mentioned as well. But generally speaking, when the Ezrat Nashim is a place that's used all the time, it's used for tefillah, and it's used in the same way, according to many poskim, as the same level of kedusha. So the Tzitz Eliezer has a similar question that he asked, that he discusses. So somebody has an office, an office is built in such a way, the only way to get into the office is that one has to go through the Beit Knesset in order to get there. Is that permissible? The way the question was posed was that the office is there, it exists. A person wants to come and rent an office or to go and to work there, but the only way they can get there is walking through the shul. Or alternatively, if the office was there first, we just mentioned this yesterday, the office was there first, and there was a path, there was a way to get there, and then subsequently that area was now become used as a Beit Knesset. Could one still so in that case it's a little bit easier. So the Tzitz Eliezer he discusses this. He says at first glance you would say there's no problem. You say there's no problem. Why? Because that's the only way to get there. The only way to get there is to go via the shul. The whole din that we're talking about is where you're using it as a shortcut. You have an alternative route, which is longer, which you could take. You choose not to take the alternative route, you use the shortcut, and that is not seen as respectful, that is disparaging, that is an inappropriate use of the Beit Knesset. Then he says, from the Rambam, we have a problem. This doesn't seem to work so well in the Rambam, because the way the Rambam brings this halakha, he says that you shouldn't use the shul as a shortcut. He says you shouldn't go inside if it's not for a dvar mitzvah. He says the only time you're allowed to go into the shul is to do a dvar mitzvah. So that's the language of the Rambam. Tzitz Eliezer works it out. This is mentioned in 2 different places in the Gemara, and a different way that he goes into the technicalities of how he learns it. But essentially, it comes out that seemingly from the Rambam that even if there's no other way to get there, it's still not appropriate just to walk through to use the shul. So then he says, okay, we have a solution. We have a way to get around it. So you need to walk through the shul to get into the office. So every time as you're walking through, you'll stop, you'll say a pasuk, you'll say 2 psukim, whatever it is, and you can do that. And then he says that's also not so simple, because for 2 reasons. He says, number 1, and we saw this yesterday, that advice is brought, that's when it's done, and not in a permanent way, not in a regular fashion. It happens occasionally. A person walks through, so you go through and you say the pasuk when you're going through the shul. But if this is derech keva, if this is the regular way, every day he's going to be doing it, and he's relying on it, so this is a form of harama. some of a loophole. That's not so. It's not so clear that that's acceptable. He says also, not everybody's so happy about this advice in the first place. Not everybody says it's okay. That's a machloket. So he says maybe not. So after all of that, he says it seems to be problematic. And then he says, but there is still there's a way out. There's a way out that this may be permitted, and that is a discussion which is brought in the Biur Halacha based on the Pri Megadim, who says the following. He says this whole din where we say you can't go use the area of the shul as a shortcut. He says if you're doing it for the sake of a dvar mitzvah, for a mitzvah purpose, so maybe then it would be permitted. Pri Megadim says that the Biur Halacha is not so sure he agrees, but that is one possibility. So says the Tzitzi Eliezer in this case. The person has an office. It depends what it's there for, what it's being used for. If it's Ochei Tzibor, if it's for tzedakah, if it's running a gmach or things for the shul, whatever it is, it's a dvar mitzvah. So he says, okay. He says you've got no other way to get there. We've got an opinion in the poskim that says that if it's for a dvar mitzvah, you can go through and use it as a shortcut. And add to that the fact, okay, when you walk through, you can stop. We said that being there for a little bit in the shul, that is the mitzvah, or you say the psukim, and all those things together. He says there is therefore what to rely on, and one could go up that way. That is in terms of getting to the office. Okay. Then another question which we mentioned very briefly last night, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more now, is the question of these ancient shuls, which are no longer functioning. Maybe it might be a ruins, the building might still be standing, but it's not used for tefillah. Maybe it's a museum, it's a tourist attraction. Is that permissible? Is that okay? So the Gemara, it talks about what you can and can't do in a Beit Knesset. So one of the things it says lo metailin bahem. You don't go around on a teal. Okay, different meanings. That word, by the way, it's very interesting, comes up in Hilchot Sukkah as well. We talk about what are the things when on Sukkot, person leaves their home, which is the Dirat Keva, goes into the Sukkah, which is the Dirat Arai, and all the things you normally do in your home, you do in the Sukkah. So it says Uchlin Basukkah, Shenim Basukkah, Metailim Basukkah, the same word. Obviously, the Sukkah is not very big. Metailin doesn't necessarily mean going on a teal. You're getting your exercise. You're going to not get very much exercise in the Sukkah, at least depending how big it is. But so this word metailin maybe means we use it to mean walk around, but it might be loitering or staying inside the place. One of the Rishonim, the Rimilonil, he writes that when it says metailin on the Gemara, when it says you shouldn't just go ein metailin in the Beit Knesset, so he understands it as follows. He says l'sachek betochan, to go inside just to play inside, or likanes letochan. So very interesting. This comes out very stringently. Says the Rimi Lonil. He says he understands metailin that if you're going inside the shul just to stand there and look at its beauty, to admire the architecture or whatever it is, he says that's not appropriate. That is not the proper use of the shul. And based on that, it would seem very, very difficult to go and to just look and use shuls as museums as such. But there's two questions we have to ask here to see if we follow this approach or not. Number one is if we're dealing with museums and ancient shuls, etc., if the shul is no longer functioning, certainly if the building's been knocked down, or if it's no longer functioning as an active shul as it was once, does it still have any level of Kedusha? What level of Kedusha does it still have? And number two, even if it does, there could be an argument yet to say, yes, the Yonatan Milonil said that if you're going in just to admire the architecture, that you can't do. But we already saw but there is a concept of Ashrei Yeshvei Beitecha, that just sitting inside the shul, just to sit inside and absorb the Kedusha, that is a certain level of mitzvah. Maybe if you're going and you're looking at the place because of the historical significance, because of the religious significance, maybe this is a form of, maybe that is considered a certain element of Dvar Mitzvah, and maybe that would be allowed as well. So regarding the first question, where once the shul has been destroyed, or it's no longer functioning, does it still have Kedusha? So the Gemara is very clear that the answer is yes. That's our default position. Even after it's not functioning anymore, there is still a certain level of Kedusha, sanctity that is retained by the Beit Knesset, and it still has to be treated respectfully. The Ramban over here has a bit of a chiddush, and he limits this quite a lot. And he limits it in the following way. The Ramban says the way to relate to the Beit Knesset is like when it comes to holy objects, so we have two categories. We have a category of Tashmishei Kedusha and of Tashmishei Mitzvah. Tashmishei Kedusha are things which in and of themselves, the object is inherently has sanctity, has holiness, whereas a Tashmish Mitzvah is an object which is used for a mitzvah. That object in and of itself does not have inherent sanctity. You have to treat it respectfully all the time when it's still functioning as part of the mitzvah. But afterwards, it can be disposed of in certain ways. So he says the Ramban, he says the Beit Knesset asurto ketashmish mitzvah, lulav, sukkah, etc. He says that what are other examples of tashmish mitzvah that he gives? Lulav, sukkah, things which don't have inherent kedusha themselves. They're used for mitzvah purposes. Need to be respectful to it. He says so too. That's the way we relate to the Beit Knesset. Now, what that means is that any tashmish mitzvah, all the time that it's still used for the mitzvah, I guess we could say all the time that it still has the potential to be used for the mitzvah, it still needs to be treated in that way. It still needs to be treated with that respect. Once the mitzvah is passed and it's no longer going to apply, so then it's not required anymore. So he says, when it comes to the Beit Knesset, it says the Ramban, and this is how he explains the whole sugya. I'm not going to get into now in terms of whether you have a building which was used as a shul, are you allowed to sell it? When are you allowed to sell it? This comes up a lot in Chutz La'aretz. So he says that even what we say that the shul still has sanctity and still has kedusha even after it's been destroyed and after it's no longer functioning, is because there's the potential that it might be rebuilt. There's the potential that it might be used again. But if you have another Beit Knesset in the city, and if it's been sold off, or if it's in such a way where it's been sold now, it's no longer going to be rebuilt, and it's no longer going to be reused, then no longer, he says, that is the like the Tashmishei Mitzvah, it no longer has the Kedusha in that way, and then you could go and you don't have to treat it with the same level of sanctity that you have until that point. Now, not everybody agrees. As I say, it's quite a chiddush of the Ramban, but it does exist. That is one position. So based on that, there is room to say that a lot of these places, former Beit Knesset, when it's reached a stage and it's clear that it's never going to be used again and it's not required, doesn't have that potential, that is one potential leniency to say that no longer requires the Kedusha. There is a Khatam Sofer over here who says that nonetheless, it doesn't mean that we have to go by all the stringent level of what we would do in a Beit Knesset. But it doesn't mean that you can now use that place for a disparaging use, for a disgraceful use. Khatam Sofer has very interesting proof for this. He says that we see by Umot HaOlam, by the non-Jews, that the way that they treat their places of worship is that once it's been designated as their house of worship, afterwards they're not going to do anything disparaging or anything disgraceful with it. And therefore, if we would, even if it was allowed, that would be a chilul Hashem. And therefore, you still have to treat it in a respectful way. So that is summarize this. Rav Shmuel Rabinovich, who is the Rav of the Kotel. So these halachot are very much what he deals with all the time. And he says the following. He says there's no need to object to those who are accustomed to entering the ruins of synagogues, even without reciting a Mishnah or a verse, so long as they conduct themselves with the proper respect in the place. He says, lekatchila, one should be particular about all to observe the Kedusha, but nonetheless, it's as long as one acts in a respectful way, that is okay. The second question, which I mentioned, there's a responsa called Kapei Aaron, who lived in Prague in the 1930s, and he writes as well. He talks about where we have a shul. We said going inside and sitting inside and looking at it, admiring admiring the architecture and learning about the history and learning about the splendor. That, he says, is permitted. That, he says, would seem to be a devar mitzvah. Certainly in the same way we said, that just being inside the shul, if one is going inside to learn about it and to see it, and it's going to increase one's avodat Hashem, so certainly that would be permitted as well, and that is considered as a respectful use. Yeah.
Don't have the sex for a while. Don't even some of them don't have the
Yeah. So that's what we said. That's what we were talking about before.